The tale of an oppressed Xinjiang is a myth Western media refuse to give up. This is China's Wild West, a land of harsh desert and majestic mountains. Hundreds of thousands are kept under the thumb and need to be saved. But before getting upset, take into consideration that the stories you've heard about Xinjiang could be a lie.
爸爸去世的时候，我当场我在陪着我爸爸。
就是看看孩子而已的一个视频，会搞成这样子，我很愤怒，很生气。
从2012年建成到现在，都是和田县看守所，没有用于教培中心。
The way they scrutinize this region of China, Western media does not seek to do Xinjiang justice. Instead, they incite disinformation and discrimination. For people who do visit Xinjiang, they find a very different human story. One place, two tales.
In a far corner of northwestern China, a car drives along a wall lined with barbed wire.
A video report the New York Times made in Kwaiton, Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, paints a bleak picture of how Uyghurs live and work. Times claims Uyghur workers were forced to leave their hometowns in southern Xinjiang and made to work here. The Times decided to do its filming secretly, even though Kwaiton sanitation station is open to the media.
It's all about making it look like there's some sort of big conspiracy going on. They use, quote, the secret footage and things like this. You know, putting things in, taking things out, the hushed voice, this type of thing. I mean, they're speaking on, on a videotape. But it's very conspiratorial. It's made for drama.
We decided to talk independently to the workers and used translation apps on our phones to communicate.
Mushu yerda ishlashni xohlayman. Bu yerning sharoiti bek yaxshi.
Bu yerda xizmat borligini aytib berdim.
Singlim mishaga kelgan acha billa ishlayli debdi kelgan edim.
Sizlar qanchalik vaqtda bir qitim uyga qaytsizlar?
Ruxsat so'rab birib kelsak bo'ladi.
The New York Times suggested the workers could earn much more back in their hometowns.
你来之前你在家里面收入多少钱？去年的200。
这边的工资固定的，天天有工作有工资。南疆那边打工，一天两天有，第3天、第4、第5天没有，这样算的话，1个月挣不了1天。我们这个环卫工人的宿舍条件很好，有24个小时的热水，随时可以洗澡。
The Kwaiton report is only one of many Western reports, which consistently portray Uyghurs' everyday lives as coercive re-engineering programs. We visited factories across Xinjiang, interviewed more than 50 workers and employers, and posed one question: Is forced labor happening? The answer is
我是这个自己来的。我喜欢的。我们自己学的那个学国语的。
现在有车了。
吃苦了。
原来有好就这样子。
我们工厂99%都是维族员工。我们厂房建起来以后说实话，在一片荒漠里面建了一座厂房，我们周围的老百姓看到一整整齐齐的厂房，心里特别开心啊。我们计划招收的时候大概是500人左右的一个规模，1天半不到，我们就有700多个人来报名。
Human rights in the West, they always talk about its ballot box and its ability to say anything you want politically. But in Asia, and in China particularly, human rights are about having a job, economic opportunity, access to education, healthcare. Right? being safe in the streets. They weren't there because they were forced. They were there because it was an opportunity. So, this idea that somehow this is nefarious, that people are trying to ruin these people's lives by giving them jobs in instances where they wouldn't have them otherwise, is simply not true. It's just playing to all of the kind of negative images about China so that they can say, oh yes, China's very evil, this is terrible.
An ASPI report promulgated by Western media claims that there are over 380 detention centers to imprison Uyghurs in Xinjiang. But when you closely study ASPI's Xinjiang report, you find that its data, analysis, and conclusions are plain wrong. Tracing some coordinates in the ASPI research, we find ourselves in front of Hotan Detention Center.
从2012年建成到现在，都是和田县看守所，没有用于教培中心。
所长，您能给我们解释下看守所跟教培中心有什么区别吗？
看守所和教培中心区别很大。看守所是羁押刑事犯罪人员，也就是触犯了刑法，是有违法行为的。
那这里面关的都是维吾尔族人吗？
看守所关押的人员和民族是没有关系的，无论是谁违反了法律，就要受到制裁。 这和哪个民族是没有关系。这栅栏、还有围墙、还有监控，这都是看守所的标准配置。
This is simply a detention center. Not unlike thousands of such penal institutions you can find anywhere in the world. But ASPI chooses to call it a camp. It's a rebranding exercise straight from the manual of Western media tricks.
Just pointing to a summit building and say, oh, that's a detention camp. Oh, that's where the children are sent and beaten every day. This is nonsense. It really demeans the whole, professionalism of journalism.
On other sites, we find even more problematic conclusions. ASPI seems to love finding walls and towers in cities. So if a school, for example, has any of these fixtures, it's almost certain to go on SP's blacklist of detention centers. We geolocate Maro Bashi No. 3 Primary School through ASPS map, and this is what we find.
我是巴楚人，我家就是这学校的旁边，就附近。我是从2017年到现在一直在这个学校的老师。这片区原来就是居民的平房区。
我说有外国媒体说这里是那个巴楚县的教培中心，你听说过吗？你觉得这个可能吗？
我没听说过，这不可能。这本来就是一个小学，也是小学，现在也是。
I can show you hundreds tech schools around China. They have walls around them. They have barbed wire on top to prevent people from getting in, not from getting out. So going along the street and pointing to a wall with some barbed wire on it, it has absolutely no meaning. You can't come to China thinking China is evil and then walk around trying to justify your opinion.
无论这家所谓的研究所如何卖力表演，都会自取其辱，成为国际社会的笑柄。
ASPI, people like Vicky Xu, try to spread fear about an increasing militarized...
We are not the only ones debunking ASPI's fake claims.
Why has research on Xinjiang produced by ASPI received so much attention in the West? They're funded by the military-industrial complex. They write China threat stories. Then they sell military equipment to governments to counter that China threat that they themselves just finished manufacturing. It's a level of conflict of interest that should be some sort of a performance on a satirical comedy show of some sort, but it's reality, and it's absolutely ridiculous that they command the level of influence and validity that they do.
In Western reports on Xinjiang, they often focus on surveillance cameras, wires, and fences. The implication is clear, but it doesn't mention cameras and fences are standard for schools across the world. A recent report suggests the US has the highest number of CCTV cameras per person in the world. Would you have ever imagined that harmless kindergarten would be described by BBC as
this kindergarten for the children of detainees?
But we found that the children's parents live and work nearby and pick them up and send them off to the kindergarten every day. BBC says
only Chinese should be spoken.
But we see children switch languages between Mandarin and Uyghur at their will.
你叫什么名字啊？
对吗？给你们拍照完了之后要说什么呀？谢谢老师。
Simply trying to make a story, dramatize it, then you should be a movie maker, right? You should not be a journalist. Journalism is supposed to report the facts and let people draw their own conclusions. But instead, what they're doing is they're imposing their own views. I meet many journalists here and they always say the same thing to me. Well, the editors don't like the positive stories because they don't sell news. So yeah, there's a lot more negative. You're really not trying to be a professional. You're simply trying to sell a storyline, to sell news.
A Uyghur woman named Zumra Dawood is often featured on the Western media. She claims that she was detained in a re-education camp and that her father died while being detained by the Xinjiang government. But we found Zumra's brothers in Urumqi and they denied her claims.
兄弟姐妹6个人关系最铁的就是我。爸爸去世的时候，我当场我在陪着我爸爸。当时爸爸是因为什么？心脏病。去世之前。他岁数也是高龄，要84岁。
您知道他没有去过，但他又在外面说他去过，看这件事。
他想的啥东西，我能知道吗？我估计他脑子非常简单的，可能到那个地方，可能别人把他忽悠起来了吧。
It seems that to do a Western media report, all you need to do is scrape together a few bits of unfounded reports, dreadful tale to spin, and a sympathetic figure like Zumra Dawood.
These people, and they're telling, quote, a personal tale, but you cannot verify that it's true. Are there abuses happening in Xinjiang? I believe it 100%. But the people who are responsible for that, if they're caught, they will be sent to prison. So this idea that the government is encouraging sadists to torture children and mothers and grandmothers and just beat them for no reason doesn't even make sense. Not given what China has accomplished and done.
You know, the journalists who go to Xinjiang, they always seem to report on what they've concluded before arriving, rather than reporting on what they actually see on the ground with their own eyes. And I've interacted with one of these journalists who visited the vocational training centers in Xinjiang, and he described them as being like Nazi concentration camps where, weirdly, the prisoners, so to speak, could go home on the weekends, but he also said that he saw people in cages. Now, this particular journalist produced a number of videos, so I asked him to point me towards the ones that would show this, and he kept dodging the question before finally admitting he didn't actually see people in cages.
In a clothing factory in Hotan, we met with Tusunisa Ali. She graduated from one of those vocational education and training centers that Western media are happy to call internment camps.
2017年8月份参加过这个培训的，我在里面学到了国语、法律知识，还有这个缝纫技术。我是2019年3月份的时候就应聘过来在这上班的。刚来的时候我就是像一个普通的员工，他们就慢慢的就发现我这个缝纫方面有技术，然后他们就让我当了一个小组长。技术师傅他们发现我有这个国语水平的能力。然后他们就让我当上了这个管理员，现在我就负责整个车间。
这个国语提高会影响您的文化身份。
维语是我的母语，我永远都不会忘记的。我学了就是多了一条路。我的宗教活动这个不会影响到我的工作的， 因为我对自己有要求嘛，上班是上班，宗教活动就是宗教活动，两个都是分开的，不会掺和在一起的。
As Tusnesa embraces her freedom of religion and opportunities, it can be hard to imagine the religious extremism in Xinjiang that has destroyed lives like hers. Bahagul Arkan's voice tightens when she begins to talk about her past.
Çünkü men özümüzün bir arzusu boldu demde öykülük men toy kılsam ata-anam türlü bir hizmet kılsam. Bir tamak etmesem öykül hoş olsa dep menda özüm toy kılgız kemmigen asası.
She was only 14 when her father informed her that she was to be the seventh wife of the religious extremist in the village in Kashgar, Xinjiang.
Toydan keyin bir xil qo'rqinchli qarang dunyoda yashagandek bir turmush kechirdim. Urutla pulqamni anglamak qilib qo'ygan ekan. Ro'y jihatdan o'zimizdagi besimchilik uchirgan erkinlik turmush yo'q. O'zimizdagi berib kelish turmush tahi yo'q. Madaniy kiyim-kechak tahi yo'q. O'zimizdagi madaniy turmush bo'lmagan ekan.
From 1990 to 2016, Xinjiang was blighted by terrorist attacks in which hundreds of people were killed. Bahagul was one of the lucky ones. She found haven in a vocational education center in Xinjiang, a place that offers not only solace from those living in fear, but helps them build up work skills.
Men mektepke 2018-yılı 10-njy aýda bardim. Men mektep bargança şaraty bek ýaxşy eken. Özümniki döwletle kesip özümüzdeki kanun bilimlerini öğrendik. Kıyan kılmışı kanunsuz ekenligini bildim. Toy xıtı amatyr, toy qılgymyň kanunsuz ekenligini bildim.
Bahagul now has a loving family and happy life. She is taking care of a neighbor's baby at home, a safer and easier job during the COVID-19 outbreak. Yet these efforts in China to tackle religious radicalization and help people like Bahagul caught in its grip has been demonized by Western media. A user of the video app TikTok, going by the name Holly915, was a community worker in Xinjiang. When her child visited her, she could meet her only briefly because of concerns over COVID-19. But the video was widely circulated on Western social media as proof that China was detaining people's various ethnic groups in Xinjiang.
在疫情期间，我们不是为了防疫，在社区给居民服务，将近40天没能见上孩子。有一天我就特别想他，就过来在大门口，在栏杆里面，我进不去，他出不来，我就在那亲了一下。很简单的一个妈妈想孩子的一个抖音，会搞成这样子，我很愤怒，很生气。我爷爷到我们还有我们孩子都是生在新疆，住在新疆长大的，我们都是很团结的。
The day before we left Xinjiang, we visited a tea house in the old city of Kashgar. Seeing us, a group of musicians offered to put on a special performance for us. The air was crisp and chilly, but the aroma of tea and naan in the house teased our noses and warmed our bones. The music was powerful and riveting, expressing the hospitality of Xinjiang people and their future aspirations. Our eyes widened and we were moved to tears. Some may want to treat these people as political tools, but their beauty and decency put them far above all such abuse.